Ring ring, it's time for another episode of Crossplay Conversations, the show where we dive deep on the world of video games while keeping it light. I'm your host today, Jacob McCourt, and I've got my two friends with me. My first friend, he is the sneaker savant, Joseph Hooper. Hello.
What's up? How's it going, everybody? I got an Owala here. You guys know about Owala? They're all the rage now.
No, tell us about fancy water bottles, my friend.
It's just like a fancy water bottle. Everybody has them. You know,
I like
they have
the
like
color scheme.
Have a little button. Nice... The lid flips up. Has a straw, a built-in straw, and a sippy hole. It's pretty nice, actually. Amanda put me onto it.
Does that go with like CrossFit, or is that for the CrossFitters or the runners?
I can tell you. I think it's just like at least
the indie gamers.
It's over here at the you play a lot of indie games, you get an Owala. That's what it is right here. The official indie game. If
you want to sponsor us Owala, our email's in bio. Our second friend, the engaged one, is Luke Lewis. Hello.
Hello. Somehow it's the last pod of 2024, which feels wild, but also makes total sense.
Yeah. Programming note on that. You'll see that there's 2 new episodes in the feed this week. One about the TGAs and this one about the IGAs. And that's going to be it for content for us for the year. But we will be back in January with our big old Game of the Year 2-parter that also involves Claire Helmberger, the other half of the engaged one. Excited for that, boys. I don't know about you.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a good time.
Prepping, been trying to catch up. Too much to play, but it's always the problem, but good problem to have.
We've been playing a lot of games, including indie games, as judges for the Indie Game Awards, which just happened a little bit before we released this episode. Today we're going to be diving in and talking about each of the categories, some of the games that we played that we haven't talked about on the show yet, but we're going to start with an icebreaker, which again is about the Indie Game Awards. Just a little behind the scenes on what it's like to be judges for the Indie Game Awards. We were flattered. We were honored to be, part of the judging committee for the Indie Game Awards, which means we played a whole bunch of video games and gave our takes on them. I don't know, Luke, if you want to start and kind of talk about what it was like on the behind the scenes end to participate in that way for the IGAs.
Sure. Yeah. So, for those that aren't familiar, the IGAs were organized by the 6-1 Indie team, along with a ton of wonderful indie showcase producers and folks throughout the industry. Folks like Dames for Games, Women-Led Games, Latin American Games Showcase, and Wholesome Games, and others were involved as well. But just a wonderful group of folks, and obviously good friends of ours as well within the industry. And I know for me personally, it just meant a ton. Like, I love doing the show with y'all and to have us recognized in this way and get to celebrate a part of the industry that we're so passionate about with the indie scene. It's been really, really cool. And I won't lie, I got super emotional watching the show and then having that title card at the end that thanked the judges, and to see our podcast included with IGN and Giant Bomb and all these folks that I deeply respect and have followed for years. Like, it was really, really cool. And that's not even to get into the games themselves. I would say, like, playing some of these nominees for catch up that I didn't get a chance to get to earlier in the year. Some of my like favorite gaming chunk of time I've had in years. So it's,
Luke, you played so many games. I feel like between the three of us, you played the most games.
I think that's probably true. I didn't beat everything, but I checked out a lot of stuff just to feel like I had a good handle on the situation for when we were doing our voting. But this was one of those things of like, oh, woe is me. I'm playing like some of the best games like in a long time. And we'll get into the variety, but the talent that was showcased in this award show is so cool in every sense. But how did y'all feel? How did it make you feel?
How'd you feel?
It was very interesting. I would say have a lot. It's not that I have more respect for, like, I don't know, the Game Awards or anything, because we all knew that video game award shows were a lot different than, regular award shows, in that it's really hard to play everything or feel like you have a full grasp on everything that's that needs to be nominated or that's actually nominated in the show and you're judging on. But yeah, there's just tons of games and a ton of great games. I appreciate the Indie Game Awards because A lot of the categories are so wholesome, and it doesn't really feel like a politicking struggle to vote and to discuss the options. It's kind of like, oh well, they all kind of deserve it, so which one deserves it the most? But it was definitely interesting being like, okay. And of course, we all have like day jobs and stuff, so this isn't like we've been playing all of these games all year to culminate to this point for the most part. So it was just kind of like, okay, how do we divide and conquer? How do we, you know, do the best job at getting a understanding of what these games are offering and whatnot? So that part was very interesting. I will also say another big like thing for me is like watching the Indie Game Awards, and after doing our own Game of the Year podcast and stuff so often, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot we're not the sole decider of these votes. When we submitted our votes, it was in my head, it was kind of like, all right, that's done. Those are the winners. And then you watch the Game Awards and you're like, wait a second. That wasn't our winner. Wait, what's going on here? And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot other people voted on this, which was fun.
I just have a lot of questions for folks who were individuals, because most of them were outlets or were podcasts that have multiple people, and I'm incredibly thankful that as three, we were sort of chosen because we had a lot of overlap, but then there were games that like only one of us played and sort of championed. But I think of someone like friend of the show, CG Danny B, who is one human being who has to just play almost everything or, have a take on everything. He's playing a lot of games, man. That's a lot of video games. So thankful for you guys, and thankful that I'm really happy with the list that we put together, and the list that we submitted. And obviously the show was stellar, so we'll talk about that in a second. Why don't we just rip into it?
Hell yeah.
And talk through. So the way we're going to break this up is we're going to talk about the individual categories, and then within those categories, games that we play that we have not spoken about on the show, we'll dive in and talk about. So why don't we just start at the beginning with best debut? They made it very clear that best is not something that they wanted to like really throw in there, that all these games are good, which I really appreciated, that they're like, you will not hear the word best in any of this. So I will adhere to that and say, how do they position them? Let's go on the site here.
I believe they just said debut game. So
we are recognizing debut game. So the nominees for that were Sorry, guys. A Ranger, Little Guardsman, Little Kitty Big City, Lottle Knot, Mullet Mad Jack, and Worldless. I think maybe we'll start with you and talk about Little Guardsman, Luke.
Sure. So this is one came out earlier in the year. It was one that I almost thought came out in 2023, but then in playing catch up realized it did in fact come out, I believe in January earlier this year. But really cool game from Hilltop Games. Elevator pitch for this one. Think Papers, Please meets like Double Fine's Broken Age in terms of overall vibes and humor. But you play as the character Lil, and you're managing the guard tower for your father in this magical kingdom. And you're vetting different people and sussing them out and deciding whether or not to let them in. And the story evolves and gets more zany over time. And you have these different abilities you can use to learn more about the people. You have an X-ray machine, a truth serum spray, and different things you can play with. The writing is really, really funny. The art is great, and just honestly immaculate vibes. And it's one that like I didn't know I needed in my life, but ended up having a total blast with it. And so I think for folks that enjoy like the base mechanic of a Papers, Please, but want something a little more on the charming, funny, magical cartoon vibe, this is a smash hit.
You didn't beat this one, correct? You just tasted
Not
it in a
quite,
couple hours, right?
Yeah. I think I'm about halfway is what I would say, but definitely one I want to finish before the end of the year.
Does it have a lot of differences between a Papers, Please? Does it do you build your guard tower, or is there anything like that that really separates it from something like a Papers, Please?
I think the separation mostly comes from a tonal perspective. It's just genuinely more on the funny side, on the comedic side. You don't it's more focused on the story. You're not like upgrading your character in that sense. But it's more just kind of evolving your perception of the character, learning more about the world, and then there are alternate paths that happen in the narrative depending on who you let into the kingdom. Things can happen. I'll give like one example as a spoiler of like, I let in this old man who seemed kind of shady, but I was like, let's just see how this plays out. Turns out like he tried to rob the bank and commit fraud, and then the bank caught on fire and different things. So like that affects
Beautiful.
the story going forward. So little things like that, like yeah, it's pretty cool. And the user interface is really nice to like quickly replay scenes if like something of consequence happened and you're like, oh, I didn't mean for that to happen. Like it's not meant to be punishing. It's meant to be like something you can quickly jump back into, try again, see what happens, have a laugh.
Something you'll think you'll go back and finish in the next
Yeah,
month or so?
definitely.
Cool. That was Lil Guardsman from Hilltop Games. I'd love to talk about another nominee in this category, Lottle Knot.
Hell yeah.
It's one that I started and beat because it's about a 4-hour experience. It came out in 2023, but at the tail end. And so I grabbed it for PC. And boys, it is kind of
so
a mix.
good.
It's so good. It's so good. Luke, you played this one also.
I did the demo for this one, but also had a blast with it. I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's almost like a reverse what's the not the power wash simulator, like a reverse power wash simulator, but then it's got sort of the Tinykin vibe to it where obviously you're underwater, so you're swimming around, but essentially you are cleaning up trash and, you know, cleaning up the environment. And at the same time, there's this like Chow Garden from Sonic the Hedgehog function as well, where it's very light, but you are finding fish and like feeding them, and then they start to develop into like larger fish that you can then catalog in an encyclopedia. I loved every single moment of this thing. It just felt really good to play. I just love like completion games because you can just turn off your brain and like just clean things or collect the garbage or whatever. And there's upgrade mechanics where you can get new tools and new, the food items that you can feed to your Lottle Knots. It's just rad. Frankly, if it was a 2024 game, it'd probably be on my top 10 list. I'm very sad that I didn't play it in 2023, but it's a freaking rad game, boys.
So I'm just curious, right? Because you invoked Tinykin. That's the key word to make me start paying attention. Like, is this because Tinykin I really loved because there was just something about the mechanics that were a vibe, like rolling or like grinding around on that little sponge and whatnot. Is this a mechanics thing or more like a just kind of loop thing? Like, what's the hook for you, at least when you were playing it?
Yeah, the Tinykin thing is more of a loop thing where it is you will go into an environment. It's a sizable environment where there's I think 6 smaller biomes within that, and essentially you go into a biome and it gives you a percentage meter. It reminded me a lot of Tinykin where you collected all the little freaks that you take with you, where here you're just going into an environment and, you know, making the number go up. And as you're making the number go up, you're cleaning things up, whether it's, you know, you're cleaning algae or you're picking up garbage or whatever with your little ray gun. So you use a ray gun that cleans everything up. As the number goes up, it really felt like Tinykin in that way, where you're just collecting everything in the environment and then moving on to the next environment. It is not a Pikmin like. It is really just in structure alone.
Okay.
It just like scratched my brain in a way that I was like, oh, this is nice. You know, this is just the right amount of engaging, just the right amount of like, it's not a time mechanic in a sense, but like your air is running out. So then you have to go back to your main hub and refuel, but you quickly get upgrades. So you have like a lot of time to work with, but it's just like just the right amount of like, okay, pushing you to do the next thing, pushing you to keep moving. But yeah, really delightful. Enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, that was Lottle Knot from Moon Lagoon, which is also a great name for a studio. The winner in this category, though, was neither of those games. It was Little Kitty Big City, which I know, Luke, you and I played and loved it. And so really thankful for the team at Double Dagger. And what a speech they gave, surrounded by kitty cats.
So cute.
Beautiful.
So congratulations to the team at Double Dagger Studio for Little Kitty Big City. we'll shout out the accessibility category and just go through that one really quickly. The nominees there were Another Crab's Treasure, Elsie, Periphery Synthetic, Pine Hearts, SteamWorld Heist 2, and Surmount, a mountain climbing adventure. The winner there was Another Crab's Treasure for some of the accessibility features that they threw in, but also they talked a lot about Big Gun that they put in there, that essentially they were like, hey, the game should just be easy. And so if people want to take Big Gun and one-shot every single thing, why are we stopping them? And so they even had a little plastic gun in the acceptance speech, which we loved. Any thoughts on this category, y'all?
I mean, I played it. I loved it, and I appreciate that they made the accessibility feature for difficulty like a fun thing, because I feel like some people kind of might feel down on themselves or might feel like just lowering the difficulty is kind of like a way out. But when you give them a gun, then it's just like a fun mechanic, and you're like, let me just try this just to see what it's like, or let me just shoot this thing with a gun, and it becomes more of a comedic thing than it's easy, I'm being a baby or whatever type of thing. So I appreciate that. I like how they put some thought into that.
Yeah, agreed. I also want to give a shout out just to the production of the showcase. I loved when with these interstitials with the acceptance speeches. I thought it was so fun throughout the show seeing the varying like video quality and ways folks filmed it, and I think that's like representative of the indie scene also in a big way. So yeah, and I appreciated Nick from Aggro Crab angling it so his Krill plushie had the gun behind him and stuff, like little funny bits. It was very good.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of the non-awards categories later, but Xavier Nelson had a stellar like segment.
Insane. It was so funny.
Fed on that exact thing of like indie production and did it well.
For sure.
We're gonna move on now to music. The nominees were Pacific Drive, The Cub, Flock, Core Keeper, Wild Bastards, and Thrasher. I do want to take this opportunity to talk about one that Luke, you and I both played. That's Wild Bastards. That's a fun surprise.
Yeah, very very cool game. It's a sequel to Void Bastards, I believe was the first game, right?
Yeah,
and
like a pseudo sequel,
different style of gameplay in a sense, but yeah, this one's real dope. It's first person shooter, but also turn based battle systems. But then in your individual combat turns, you're zooming down into first person and you're firing weapons and running around and doing stuff. Old West sci-fi vibes. Yeah, really really cool. Really dug it. The music is a total vibe, so it's fun to see it included here. But yeah, pleasantly surprised. As someone who enjoys turn-based combat, it was fun to see a twist on that approach with this one.
Yeah, and what I really loved is it had like not boomer shooter energy, but it definitely had like old school Quake, because you'll essentially have your spaceship and then you'll beam down to a planet that has a map that you go into individual nodes, and some of them are combat encounters, and then those combat encounters very much feel like old Doom or Quake, like PC 90s vibe to it. And I really appreciate it because it's not the most like fluid or like dynamic shooting, but despite that, it still felt like you said, it's almost like turn based, but it's real time at the same time.
Yeah, and the style of the game, is just 11 out of 10 in a sense, and I loved the like individual character abilities, and each character has kind of a specific weapon style they use, and so playing around, and then you can quickly switch between the characters on your squad, so you're jumping between a shotgun and a pistol and going back and forth, and it's like almost instantaneous. But yeah, I think the kind of, it's very deliberate in that sense too, so it's not fast paced, but it's like it's an interesting blend of like what you would imagine a fast-paced FPS to like a slower turn-based game, and I think it meets somewhere in the middle in a nice way.
Totally. Wild Bastards from Blue Manchu, but the winner in this one is one that I know, Luke, you have played and covered a little bit on, I think, both Lukewarm Games, and you posted a little short form clip on a little unboxing on our channel.
Yeah. Pacific Drive has been a big one for me this year. I covered it pre-release. I did an interview with the game's director, Alex, and yeah, have been a big fan pre-release, big fan post-release. But yeah, the music in the game is absolutely dope. the orchestral stuff is awesome. The electronic score is really cool. The indie bands that they have on the radio station are really, really cool. And it all adds to this vibe of exploring this specific Northwest based, pseudo apocalyptic crazy world. And yeah, I was really excited to see this one recognized in this category. I think it totally deserves it.
Yeah, I did want to also shout out the Cub.
Yeah, oh my god,
we vibed out on the soundtrack when we were like looking at these things, and so shout out to the Cub.
If you're a music nerd that's like, I just like to know where video game music is at, what's going on, keep my finger on the pulse, check out the Cub. The game is really, really cool, but the soundtrack and score are insane. Like, and I mean that in a quality way, but I also mean that in a way of like, is that like a baby crying being looped in a house music track right now? Is this like man singing in the sultry country tone looped against electronic music? Like, they're just doing all these like interesting pairings and technical things that I'm like, I never would have thought of this, but it's like very interesting and definitely separates it apart from like anything else I heard this year musically.
So again, shout out on that one to the winner, which was Pacific Drive. We're going to move now to visual design. The nominees here were Harold Halibut by Slowbros, Haunty by Moonloop Games, The Plucky Squire by All Possible Futures, Ultros by Haddock, Bo Path of the Teal Lotus by Squid Shock Studios, Christopher Stair, and Trevor Youngquist, and Crow Country by SFB Games. Hooper, we haven't heard from you in a little while, so I'd love for you to quickly talk about Haunty, because that's one that we have not really talked about on the show.
Yeah, this is kind of my category. I played a couple of these games.
Hell yeah, you
Haunty, Haunty is like, I think, a pretty incredible game. Like both, we just did the music category. I think the music in it is incredible as well. Michael Kirby Ward, who did the soundtrack there, did a phenomenal job. But like the visual design on this is just absolutely insane. Like it's a beautiful game. The drawn images, like the hand kind of like ink drawn images is just, really stunning. And I'm honestly surprised that this game across everything, like, all facets of the industry didn't get a little bit more buzz, because I think it's very beautiful, and the way that the music and the art all comes together is kind of like a little bit emotional, where it's like, oh, like, why am I feeling the feels right now? Because the game is like not necessarily trying to touch you in that way, and it kind of is, but it's more like family friendly in that regard, but it still like hits big. So shout out Haunty for sure. That was great. I also played Crow Country as well on this, and I mean, I talked about this, I believe, earlier. Visual design on this one is awesome. Like the retro PS1 style that's starting to come back in style. Loved it. So definitely check both of those out.
I think, and then Haunty is a twin stick shooter, right? Like it's twin stick shooter plus like Cappy mechanic from Super Mario Odyssey, right?
Yes, 100%. Like I didn't finish it, but like as much as I played, I didn't see. I wouldn't say if that kind of scares you, I wouldn't let it scare you, because I think it's also pretty accessible. It's kind of more about experiencing the experiences than like having like the craziest bullet hell type situation coming at you. So yeah, it's cool. It's a very unique game for sure.
I was going to say that I think this was the first category. We had some discussion for the previous categories, but this one was like the one where we had the closest thing to argument. I don't think it ever got like a heated argument, but it was like, we're all pretty excited about all of these nominees. And I think we could have made the case for each of them in their own unique ways for being really, really interesting visually.
I think it's one of two categories that we left up until the last possible day before we voted.
Yeah.
And we were still making changes or like having conversations of like, hey, Jacob, play this more, check this one out, Hooper. And I will say, because I checked it out right before we kind of submitted, and there's like a set piece that happens in the first 20 minutes that, Hoop man, I was like, oh yeah, because you essentially come out on this like huge chasm and it's all animated in like a very bespoke way, and I was like, shit, this is wild.
Yep.
So
I think screenshots don't really do it justice in
No,
that
I
sense,
agree.
where it's like the art looks stunning, but then you see it in motion and you see like different colors being introduced, and like the way it's animated, like you said, is next level.
And everything
but
is
the winner
very
in this
intentional
one,
as well. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry,
no,
Jacob.
No.
go ahead.
Like the music hits when, like the moment you're talking about, the music hit when you do get on that bridge with the chasm and everything. I think it's it's weird. I don't want to say like that Breath of the Wild moment, but it is that kind of like, okay, we're guiding you here so that you can feel something and be like, wow, type of moment, which is sick. I love when they do that.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of the first time that you'll like shoot up in one of those towers in Breath of the Wild and kind of see the whole world. Like that's exactly what the
sure.
haunted moment reminded me of.
Yeah, yeah.
But the winner in this category was Harold Halibut from Slow Bros, a game they've been working on for 13 years that is like wildly hand animated. One that Luke, you checked out and were kind of like, if I'm going to paraphrase, like you were blown away with how it looked.
It's insane. I'm glad
Yeah.
to see it win this award because, as they said in their acceptance speech, 13 years on this game, and it shows, and each object in the game being individually sculpted and modeled and then animated subsequently. I think I compare this to games like Cuphead, where when you look at them, you're like, how did that become a reality? But I'm so glad it did. But yeah, I think it's insane and easily deserves the win here, or the this specific recognition rather.
One note, Hoopman, you talked about Crow Country. If you want to
Mhm.
hear Hooper's full thoughts on that, check out episode 33 of this show because he has a mini review of Crow Country in that one. Bite-sized game. So this is games, a standout title that deliver impact and engaging experiences within a brief playtime of 5 hours or less. The nominees were Thank Goodness You're Here by Cole Supper, Duck Detective, The Secret Salami by Happy Broccoli Games, Buckshot Roulette by Mike Klubnica, Please Touch the Artwork 2 from Thomas Waterzui. Sorry if I've butchered names here. Click Holding from Strange Scaffold, and Manami Lane from Doot and Blip Bloop. Why don't we start and talk about Please Touch the Artwork 2, which is one I believe, Luke, you jumped in on.
Yeah, this was one I played all in one sitting shortly before we did our voting. For folks that are interested, it's free to play on Steam, but the base elevator pitch for this one, it is a find the hidden object game, but entirely based around legitimately created paintings. And so think of like you're exploring an art museum vibe, and you're going through these paintings, you're trying to find objects, and you're solving these puzzles to then progress the story. It's very breezy, it's very just relaxing to play. The music that they chose is also really nice and complimentary of the whole experience, but I just had a really nice time with it, and I think I beat it in under an hour and a half. We have a running joke on the podcast of, for our game of the year podcast, we have a category that we're calling the Luke Lewis trademarked cup of coffee on a rainy Sunday afternoon game, and this is exactly that. And if you want a nice relaxing experience showcasing beautiful artwork, relaxing music, great vibe, really enjoyed Please Touch the Artwork 2. And I wasn't familiar with the first game, so I'm definitely curious to go back and check that one out, because I do often look for a game that I can just finish in one sitting and be done with, but have a really nice experience.
I remember the skull finger. Is that kind of how you play the game? And then is it played best with a mouse or with a controller?
I did mouse and keyboard for this one. I would recommend it because you're definitely like scanning the environment and trying to find objects. So it's a lot of like, you'll encounter a character in the game and they'll task you with finding 5 bottles. And so then you're traveling through, think of like an open hub world where it's like you're traveling through like 5 or 6 frames to then find stuff. And oftentimes it had kind of light Metroidvania elements where like once you find the 5 bottles, then you can go back here and open this new door that you didn't have access to. And oh, I found the newspapers I was looking for in this one. So it's like, did you ever use the I Spy books as a kid?
Hell yeah.
Where there was like the list of like things you were trying to find. So it was like you're never always looking for one thing, you're always looking for like 10. And so it's this like fun grab bag of like, oh, there's that, oh, like, and the pacing was really nice, so it always felt like I was getting that nice serotonin boost of like, I found it, yes, you know.
I just can't believe the game is free.
Yeah, me neither. They should charge money. As someone who played it, I was like, it's worth your time and
You're
money.
like, I would have paid $5 for this.
I would have paid. I think I would have paid maybe 10. That's like the
Wow.
good price range. Like, I just had a really nice time with it. But yeah,
Love that. The winner in this category is one that the three of us played. Thank goodness you're here by Cole Supper. It's one that we also covered on the podcast. So if you want to see our full thoughts on that one, you can go to episode 28. And maybe what I'll do is I'll link in the description.
yeah, we can
the
put something
podcast that
together.
we mentioned. But episode 28, we do a full highlight. But shout out to the team at Cole Supper for this win. Do you guys want to talk at all about this weird video game anymore? Or should folks just go and listen to episode 28 if they want to hear us scream about a very weird game that rocks?
I mean, go listen to the episode. We love this game. It's goofy. It's fantastic. It's short.
And I
All the
think
great things.
similar to their acceptance speech, when they were just like, thank you,
Hey, thanks.
it was like chef's kiss. Perfect.
Yeah.
Stone cold. Yeah, really great. And I think it's also worth noting, I know we've mentioned this, but if we're not talking about a game within these individual category breakdowns right now, chances are we did cover it earlier in the year. So, but there's a lot of good games on this list. So trying to highlight some of the new ones that we played, like you said.
Yeah, I was really excited this week on the, God, which showcase was it, Luke? Please keep
It
me
was
honest.
Wholesome for the...
You know exactly what I'm going to say for the Duck Detective sequel, right? So excited for that. You said, Jacob, there's one game in here that you're really going to love, and it is Duck Detective: The Ghost of Glamping. That is a sequel that is coming out for this one, which is rad.
How fun is it that we're in this era where like mysteries are back between like Knives Out? We got the Golden Idol games firing on all cylinders. We got the Duck Detective games now coming out every couple of years or yearly now. Like, love it.
Have I also put into a microphone my thoughts on click holding after you told me to play it, Luke?
I don't think so. And I want to
That's
say
a weird game.
I
Holy
want to be
moly.
clear. My recommendation wasn't like, you'll love this. It was
Yeah,
like,
you need to play it.
appreciate a short game. This is really interesting. I think we'll have a conversation about this. So
Yeah.
for listeners out there, like if you're intrigued, play it. But if you're on the fence about it, that's fair,
Also,
is what I would
if
say.
you're on the fence about it, just play it.
Yeah, it's one of those that's so short that it's like, it's a conversation piece. I think it's very interesting. And for folks that aren't familiar with like how that game came to get together, like it's an insane story. I'm forgetting where the article was that broke down like how it came together over a GDC conversation. Quickly became a game in a matter of months.
And also one
It's
that
nuts.
Xavier wasn't potentially going to put out either, right?
Yeah, it's a wild story for that one, but Strange Scaffold is firing on another level, and we see them get highlighted in the IGA event for industry impact. But
Yeah.
he said it himself of they've released, what was it, 15 games in the last
15 in 5 years. I think.
5 years, which is nuts. And obviously some of these are shorter experiences, but revolutionizing the game, I think, in terms of like quality and like quality of studio from everything I've heard, and then their output is just next level.
Agreed. Let's move to innovation. This recognizes a game that pushes boundaries with its unique premise or gameplay twist. The nominees were UFO 50 by Mossmouth, Rusty's Retirement from Mr. Morris Games, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes from Simogo, Cryptmaster from Paul Hart, Lee Williams, and Akapara Games, Karmazoo from Pasta Games, and Odada from Sven Algrim, Mathilde Hoffman, and Bastian Klossdorf. Luke, we have a huge fan here of Rusty's Retirement. Can you please talk about this video game?
Y'all, Rusty's Retirement, strap in. For a game that is typically not in my genre wheelhouse of something that I actively play, I really fell in love with Rusty's Retirement. I put about 20 hours into it. For folks that aren't familiar, this is think of an idle farming game. You set it up on the bottom of your desktop, but the coolest thing about the game is that you can customize the sizing of this pixel farming game, so you can make it as big or small on your screen. You could swap it between monitors, and it's the type of game that you have on while you're doing other stuff in the background. And it's really delightful. The art style is wonderful, and it's just like the perfect amount of addictive gameplay to keep you engaged. You're planting your crops, you're earning currency to then upgrade your facilities, you're unlocking new characters that then help you harvest your crops, you're getting robot drones that are out there harvesting crops to make biofuel, which is powering the robots. And it's just this really satisfying loop. And similar to what I said about Lottle Knot, it just scratches my brain in the right way, where I'm just like, oh, this is really nice. And there have been other games in this genre, but I think this one is just really smartly done. And the customization of sizing the game, putting it on different monitors, and just the ease of use to be able to play it while you're doing other stuff is really, really rad. But yeah, the first weekend I had this game, I had it on. My computer was just basically on all weekend, and I was like getting up to make lunch and then checking in on Rusty, and he looks a little tired. I'm going to build him a bench so he can rest between. But yeah, just a absolute blast. It's only a couple bucks on Steam, but if folks are remotely interested, if you enjoy a cozy game, if you're looking for something to have on while you're plugging away on a personal project, it's a good one.
Hoopman, is there any games in this set of 6 that you wanted to call out? I don't think you've talked about Lorelei that much.
I don't remember. I'm sure I did. I mean, I really like Lorelei, just because of the types of puzzles that they provide. I feel like video games, it's a lot of times either it's like just straight up you're doing like, pen and paper math, and you're just kind of churning through them without any like, story or anything to go along with them. Kind of like those classic like DS brain age type games.
Mhm.
Or, puzzles are baked into the environment. This is a little bit of both, where these are puzzles that you are not playing around with. But it's also in the context of this really weird like mystery story they're setting up. The game is very odd, but once you start playing, you quickly kind of figure out, okay, like I'm just gonna roll with it and challenge myself to figure out what's going on. And Jacob, I know you already talked about it, about like, literally got the strings up on the board trying to figure out how it all connects together. So yeah, love that one.
Beyond that, we've got UFO 50 from Mossmouth, which is one that we've adored. That's a freaking video game, huh? Actually, it's 50 video games.
It's 50 video games, and they're all incredible. And I feel like despite multiple hours in the game, I've literally only scratched the surface. In this award show, when they showed like the sizzle reel B-roll of games, I was like, I haven't played most of those, but I've spent a significant time in the game. But what an absolute blast. What an homage to games of, that era, but also modernizing them in such a unique way. Jacob, since you played it too, do you have any like specific games you want to shout out? Because I think like shouting out specific ones of like the variety is a really fun way to be like, what is this game? My favorite was the one where you're managing the base of ants, and then you're like moving.
Snap.
Yeah, it's like this like almost pseudo turn-based thing, but you like go into little battles. You have your ant army, and you're going out grabbing eggs and then bringing them back to your base, and then that gives you a new ant soldier, and then you're fighting the other base's ants, and you're just building up over time. But then you can totally go to a different realm of gamedom and play Coastal Drive, where you're doing like pixelated shooting on California Highway, and that's really fun too. Totally different gameplay style. I'm blanking on the other one, but the other favorite I had was you play as a pilot and you crash land on a planet, and it's kind of got Pikmin vibes. This is like a full ass RPG, according to folks. You can play this for 50 hours. You're going out on little adventures. You're collecting currency. You're going back. You're upgrading stuff, trying to repair your ship. It's nuts. This game is nuts.
And the crazy part is, I've played about 12 games in the package.
Sure.
And I've not played any of the ones you described.
Because
I played a couple.
I love that.
And then I got distracted by Party House and played way too much Party House, because that game is rad. I want Party House on my phone. where essentially you can go through and be like, invite party guests in, and you try and get a score that helps you get more party guests, with the eventual goal of like hitting a goal like getting 4 aliens in your house before you run out of turns. It's rad.
Yeah.
And
I
also,
would
like,
say,
I haven't even experienced the metagame of it as well, which, Luke, because you're a little farther into it, is there a metagame, or is it really just like this fake company, UFO Soft, made these games and there's lore that kind of ties all these things together, like very light lore?
I guess the metagame comes into play in a sense that there's like, you'll find like sequels within the thing. So I recommend like
Campanella
start
1, 2, 3.
Sure. Yeah. So like I would say start with like play the first couple in order just to kind of get the idea of what they're trying to do. But then I would say just jump around and play what looks intriguing to you, since there are so many games. But yeah, based on what I've played, I think the lore is just the idea of seeing game history kind of evolve over time as you play. When I first started playing just for fun, I jumped into game number 1 and game number 50 just to see the like spectrum of options available. And I think it's also kind of fun. The way they designed it, of being able to quickly jump between things, saves your progress between things. Like, you know, if you fire up a retro game console these days, it's not that smooth in comparison, so it's fun to be able to play this style of game in this like really seamless way.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if there are games that are going to spawn out from this where other people do compilations.
Yeah.
So I guess shout out to the team at Mossmouth for
I
putting
also
together like a banger package.
Totally, and I have to imagine it'll also inspire, you know, folks that try to put their games out on itch.io or those types of platforms. Like, I think we're going to see more collaborative packages and Steam bundles and that sort of thing, where it's like, play this collection of games, let's all work together on this unified experience, which I think is dope.
The winner in this category was not UFO 50, Rusty's Retirement, or Lorelei. It was Cryptmaster from Paul Hart, Lee Williams, and Akapara Games. We got the Cryptmaster who gave the acceptance speech, which, of course, a person I started a beef with on BlueSky successfully, which, again, W Cryptmaster. I played about an hour of this game, and for those who don't know, and again, shout out to Akapara for sending a code for this one for me. Essentially, you will use like skill words that you pick up to do combat, but it's very much like an old school like PC game where you're going through, like, I don't want to say a maze, but like you're going through a dungeon first person style, and then you're collecting letters and using letters in combat by like typing the word hit. And then even for collecting treasure, what's super innovative in this one is that they're not using AI, but essentially the Cryptmaster, based on what you're typing, has a metric ton of different responses to the way that you're typing in words, even to the point where I saw this, didn't experience this. You type in a couple of naughty words, and then he eventually will then like say, hey, you got to pay into the swear jar, and then we'll like take it from there. So just like a wild amount of innovation in like the Cryptmaster character, I find, but very like Typing of the Dead style game if you play that one.
Nice.
Typing of the Dead in mechanic only, like it's
Sure.
obviously a very different game than Typing of the Dead. Any others in this category y'all want to talk through?
Karma Zoo is really interesting if you're looking for a new take on a multiplayer game. Visually, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is Animal Well, because it resembles Animal Well with its pixel art quite a bit, but I think the way they do like non-verbal communication is really neat. And doing like platform-based puzzles where like one person needs to activate the switch or the block to then allow the next person to move, I think that sort of timing is really neat. So that was a cool one that I enjoyed.
Love. We've got a couple categories left here, so we're going to move to emotional impact, recognizing a game that profoundly resonates with players through personal, emotional, and thematic experiences, leaving a lasting impression and fostering deep connections with their audience. The nominees were Neva by Nomada Studio, Kind Words 2 by Pop Cannibal, In Stars and Time by Insert Disc 5, Thirsty Suitors by Outer Loop Games, Self Loss by Goodwin Games, and Until Then by Polychroma Games. Luke, you and I played Kind Words 2 as a part of this judging process, and we both really liked it.
It's really delightful. Have a bad day. Fire up kind words 2. You're not having a bad day anymore.
Nope, you're not. You say, "Hey, here's help me solve my problem," and then people come in or like come and help me get recommendations of cool new music to check out, and it happens. They do it.
It's so pleasant, and like the game's so cozy and nice, and yeah, another front runner for Luke Lewis trademark cup of coffee on a rainy Saturday morning game. But yeah, really really delightful, and like taking the best parts of what the internet should be and just fostering this really nice community and nice experience for folks, which I think is rad.
Yeah, and we spoke briefly, or at least I spoke briefly to the team that put it together, and just the amount of like work that they have to do on the back end on moderation and stuff like that. Like I can't even imagine what it's
I was
like
wondering
to
that
do
too.
that.
Yeah, but it's like they do a great job because based on my couple hours with it, and not like I didn't stay in it for hours on end, but it's one that I've
Mhm.
like checked in for 10 or 15 minutes every couple
Yeah, because it's
days.
one that like you couldn't sit and play in one sitting because there's no traditional like structure or ending to it. It's more just
It's
like
just an ongoing
place.
thing. Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
place you go.
It's a place you go. Hoopman, self loss is one that we haven't talked about on the show at all.
Yeah, this one is definitely one of those introspective games. It wasn't really for me personally, just because I'm more of a gameplay heavy type of guy. But it's definitely one that is going to try and touch some feels, and I definitely feel like it's one of those games where if you have a personal connection to what they're talking about, um, this is one that can maybe help you like unpack some of your own personal feelings. uh but yeah.
Thirsty Suitors, Luke, is one that you played and talked about on episode 137 of the Lukewarm Games podcast. So we're going to link that in there. But not one we've talked about here. It's a game that came out in 2023, but anything you want to touch on for Thirsty Suitors, if you remember?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great adventure game, really cool turn-based combat, the art style, the music, um similar to Venba. I think it does really amazing things for cultural representation, and I really enjoyed the story quite a bit, and I believe it's still on Game Pass, so I'd highly recommend folks check it out if you're interested.
And then another game that did not win the category, In Stars and Time, is one that I checked out. Again, that's a 2023 game. We've not said it yet, but the eligibility period for this show was November 1 of 2023 to November 1 of 2024. So there are a couple games that came out in late 23 that are part of this, like Lotto Not that we talked about earlier. But In Stars and Time came out in 23. I played a couple hours of it. It's very much like a Game Boy Color Pokemon style game in black and white, but the writing on it's really fantastic in the little bit that I've played, and so it's one that and I just know is going to punch me in the feels, and so it's one that eventually I will go back and finish. So that was In Stars and Time by Insert Disc 5, but the winner in this category was one that both Luke, you, and Joseph played. It's Neva was the winner here. Any thoughts on Neva, because we've not really talked about it yet?
You want to
I
kick it off,
mean,
Joseph?
all I gotta say about this game is just look at the trailer, man. Just look at the trailer and you already know. And I will say it's kind of a cheat code that they put the like dog whimpering sounds in the game. Like just just emotional uh terrorism is how I would call it. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't take it. So beautiful game, and like definitely as you get deeper in like the things it has to say. I don't want to spoil too much, but like environmental impact and stuff like that as well. Like um, great messages.
Yeah, and the game does really cool things with like perspective and like just visual scaling and how you're looking at your character moving through environments. But yeah, this was one 5-10 minutes in. I'm not crying, you're crying. No spoilers, but just beautiful, beautiful experience. I think is the bottom line in every facet.
It's one that I will probably play maybe over the holidays, maybe when it's on a little baby sale, I can grab it for 20% off or whatever, but something I definitely don't play. I played Gris and it didn't like connect with me because like maybe it wasn't gamey enough, which is why I'm so excited for Neva because it seems a little more gamey than Gris.
Yeah, I enjoyed the combat aspects and the platforming. Like I thought there was some nice, just the right amount of challenge. Nothing crazy, but
Love. A shout out to Neva, who won this category by Nomada Studios. Gameplay design. Recognizing a game with exceptional gameplay mechanics that contribute to the overall flow challenge and enjoyment of the game, encouraging players to immerse themselves fully in the experience. The nominees were Balatro by Local Funk, Mini Shoot Adventures by Soul Game Studio, Grun by Sock Pop Collective, Tiny Glade by Pounce Light, Nine Souls by Red Candle Games, and Victory Heat Rally from Sky Devil Palm. Maybe let's start with Nine Souls, which is something that Joseph, both you and Luke, I believe, checked out.
Yeah, I've put some time into this. This game is absolutely rad. Also, one of these kind of like Souls-like esque, Hollow Knight esque punishing games where you do have to be like on your P's and Q's in terms of your timing and your parrying and all that stuff. But yeah, like I'm still in the process of finishing this game, but I'm absolutely having a blast. Like the world that they're setting up is very interesting. Kind of a little bit of mystery. Definitely some dark moments, especially in that first 10 minutes of the game. You're like, wait a second, this game has some messed up stuff going on. So yeah, it's fantastic. And if you like those precision combat types games, I think it is worth checking out. It's on Game Pass right now. So
Yeah, I played that opening, and I think I messaged you, Hooper, and I was like, this is your shit. This is very much an awesome game. But yeah, the combat feels really, really good. And I think it's rare for a 2D game to like really nail the parry, the sliding, the maneuvering through the world. But yeah, it's also visually like crazy beautiful. I think they made a point to kind of share the love and not nominate the same games across multiple categories, but I could have easily seen this one also hanging in visual design as well.
Tiny Glade, Luke, you played this one. It was one that we've seen in showcases.
Yeah.
One where you can kind of draw or like build through your mouse cursor little environments. I distinctly remember you liking this one.
Yeah, I think it's really well done. It's a fantasy storybook city builder, but the gameplay aspects of how you can use your mouse quickly and easily to do multiple things. You're quickly terraforming environments, you're placing buildings, you're changing landscaping, you're customizing this world. And I think if you check out the game on TikTok or different social media platforms, you'll see how quickly folks have taken to the tool and made their dream environment come to life. They've replicated European castles and fairy tale environments and different things, and it's really, really cool. It's one that's like not necessarily my cup of tea. I picked it up because my partner Claire was really excited about it because it is her total jam. But I was really blown away with just the ease of use of how you can quickly, specifically the terraforming. I was like, oh wow, I'm like just getting right into it. And so once you master that, I think people are doing some really cool things, which is rad.
We've talked about Grun previously on the show, so we've already linked our mouthwashing episode. There's a mini review of Grun in that one, so I won't focus there, but I do want to talk about Mini Shoot Adventure because it's one that the three of us have played and we've not talked about it on our podcast. Luke, I can tell you're jumping out of your skin here.
I'm real excited. I finished this one. I had an absolute blast with it. It's absolutely delightful if you enjoy elevator pitch, Zelda Link to the Past meets twin stick shooter, but it's just really, really well done. I think the gameplay loop is excellent. I think the progression is really, really good. You have your little spaceship that you're maneuvering through. It's just so satisfying to cruise through the environment, solve puzzles at your own pace. You're constantly leveling up and upgrading your different skills and abilities to then uncover new secrets. I enjoyed it so much that I beat the game, and I'm still going back to it because I want to 100% it. I'm at like 95% right now. Like I have a couple little secrets outlying, but yeah, can't recommend this one enough if you enjoy this style of game, or even if you don't. It's like very I think it's simple to pick up, but then there's just the right amount of challenge in the combat over time to keep you engaged.
I also really liked it. I would say out of this whole process, it's probably the biggest surprise because it's something that I've heard some people like Dan Reichert has been talking about it a lot, and then the folks at MinMax have also covered it in some detail. But I was like, Zelda like twin stick shooter, whatever. It's rad. I've played maybe 2 or 3 hours of it, and it's something that like when I finish Caravan Sandwich, which is one that we'll talk about a little bit later, I will probably go back and play this some more. So biggest surprise for me in this whole like judging process was how this one came out of nowhere. Man, you played this one too, right?
I did play this one. I have to play a little bit more. I like it. This seems like a podcast game for me, where I'm just like turning my brain off, shooting stuff. I'm also not the best at twin stick shooters. I think for some reason my Dark Souls experience, my Souls-like experience, doesn't translate well to twin stick, or not twin stick, but just like the like kind of shoot 'em up, because I just get overwhelmed and I cannot get all those guys off my screen. So I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to play some more and see how much I can progress here. And if Luke has given it the stamp of approval, I think it's worth trusting. So I'll give it a fair shot there.
There are some difficulty options I'll throw out for listeners as well. So I played on, I think, the medium difficulty, which felt like a nice balance. But for folks that want to scale it down or crank it up a little bit, you got some options.
But the winner was none of those games. It was a little game from Local Funk called Balatro, which I guess is Balatro is how you say it?
I was gonna bring this up, and I was waiting for it to. So we've just been mispronouncing it, I guess, for 12 months.
Balatro.
Because the creator of the game said Balatro. So that's...
Yep.
That blew my mind. I was like, what?
I think it was Lucy James that said it on the somewhere. And so I was like, oh, I've been saying it wrong for a year. Cool. But it's a very good game and we all love it very much. And like, I think it's not a surprise that it won gameplay design, because that is a well-designed game. So shout out to Local Funk on that one. We'll move on to community management, recognizing a studio that excels in fostering a vibrant and inclusive community through exceptional engagement, support, and communication that enhances player experience and builds lasting connections. The nominees were Massive Monster, Black Tabby Games, NPC Studio, Aggro Crab, Local Funk, and Pounce Light. The winner in this category was Aggro Crab, but I guess I just wanted to see if there's anything you guys wanted to call out. I wanted to remind folks that Massive Monster did some crazy stuff, like putting out a metal album and having people get married, and so like shout out to them for that craziness.
Yeah, I think all of these nominees, and this was the case in every category, but for this one, it was just like, these are all such wonderful people, all foster positive communities, all continually updated their game throughout the year, and are ones that, like, on the social media side, that I always look forward to what they're up to and what they're putting out. So yeah, just good vibes all around.
Yeah, it's hard to find anybody who doesn't deserve this award in this list. So shout out to everybody for sure.
We'll move on to narrative, recognizing a game that delivers a powerful narrative with compelling characters, immersive worlds, and or thought-provoking themes. The nominees were Mouthwashing by Wrong Organ, 1000X Resist from Sunset Visitor, Arco from Arco Team, Caravan Sandwich from Studio Plain Toast, Fear the Spotlight from Cozy Game Pals, and Last Time I Saw You by Mabaroshi Artworks. We have not talked about 1000X Resist on a podcast yet, so we need to. I finished it. Luke, did you finish it?
I'm almost there. I'm like getting real close. For Game of the Year, I'll have finished it so we can really dig into it. But what a game. What an interesting thing.
Hoopman, did you finish it, or are you still just a couple hours in?
I'm with Luke, where I'm like, I made some more progress for this. Not done yet, but it is kind of like we're in mind F territory.
It's one that I want to go and I want to watch the Jacob Geller video about it, or you know, read a whole bunch of Reddit posts about it, because it's a real mind bender that, you know, has multiple themes that I think just mash up really well, of like sci-fi and the diaspora, and, you know, potentially what's going on in Hong Kong and the pandemic and growing up. It just like, and not only the themes that it touches on, but the way that it tells its narrative, I think is almost the best part. It's not actually their narrative itself, it's some of the wild things it does in like getting the player to experience that.
Yeah, I think the way it incorporates gameplay and the way it paces the narrative and the way it uses like symbolism to represent broader social themes, like you're saying, I've never seen anything like this in a game. This is one that once we all finish it, I could totally see having a big spoiler filled conversation, because I have questions about how like I'm interpreting things and like what happened within the game. But really, really awesome. Shout out to the team at Sunset Visitor for crafting, I think, easily the most unique narrative game I've ever played. I don't think that's, hyperbole in this case, because it just feels so wholly unique in the best way, which I think if you enjoy an intriguing story, like, please play it. I don't want to give more setup than that, because it's one of those where I'm just like, just go play it. Just do it. Like, I think if you enjoy a story, this game's for you.
We're gonna find a way to talk about it a little bit more when you guys finish.
Yeah,
a full episode or on
maybe
the
we
Goaty
can
show.
throw up spoilers on Game of the Year conversation, or put some timestamps in or something. We'll figure it out. But yeah, it's definitely one that needs to be discussed in the best way.
Agreed. Arco, Luke, is one that you played for this category.
Yeah, can everybody just please play Arco out there? I say that as somebody who saw Arco announced, was kind of following it, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. I'd like to check that out at some point. But I played the opening act and just fell in love with this game. It's real good. It is a turn-based combat, but in a way that is very well paced and very like quick to execute. But it is a narrative game. You are maneuvering through the story, and each act is a sort of a vignette about a different character. The first act is about a young boy and his journey trying to find something to bring to the as an offering. That's what I'm sorry, my brain like totally went blank. And things, events unfold. You get into a combat encounter, and I just think this game does a lot of wonderful things for cultural representation, and the gameplay in particular is just really cool within this context of like a pixel adventure game that feels akin to a Oregon Trail, but then you have this fast turn-based combat, which I think is really awesome.
It's one that I'm glad that Local Funk called out during his Game Awards, that more people should play it, because it sounds like from the Arco team that it did not sell well. So if it's,
I think it was a little quieter, but yeah, that's why I'm like, please everybody just go play this. And I don't think I did a great job of selling like the scope of the game, but there's so much more to it than at the surface, I would say. And the focus on Indigenous folks, I think, is really rad within the space.
I played Caravan Sandwich from Studio Plain Toast. I know you did too, Luke. I would say beyond Mini Shoot, this is probably one of my other biggest surprises of the year. It is one where you go around in a van and you scan the environment for treasure, and you get to know people on a distant planet and do tasks for them. And it's just really, it's not a cozy game, but I think it's one of those games that just feels so like the world is so well built just in the characters that they made. It's cute as hell, and I've played 5 hours of it, and I plan on finishing it, and I'm really enjoying it, to the point where I can't guarantee this, but it might be on my top 10 of the year. Yeah, I'm really loving it.
High praise. Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit too. It's just delight to play. The world is interesting and cool. I like the ties into sci-fi. The collecting to craft objects is very satisfying. Driving the caravan van is very fun.
I think Greg Miller said it was a bad name, but it's a very good name.
I think it's a very good name. Yeah. But I think if you lose the fact that it's capital W, which maybe that's a little confusing, because you're not like making sandwiches out of your van. You're like exploring this kind of pseudo desert area and finding old bits of technology and different things. But yeah, I had a blast with it so far, and it's been one that's just like, it's not, cozy is the wrong word, like you said, but it is comforting. I would say, in a way, like it's good vibes.
Yep. And the last game we'll talk about briefly is Fear the Spotlight. I will just say, if you want my thoughts on it, I have a review that I posted at thegaminggrief.ca where I gave the game an 8 out of 10 and said it was a moody and fun romp with strong atmosphere and good puzzle design. Luke, did you have thoughts on Fear the Spotlight?
Yeah, I really enjoyed my time with Fear the Spotlight, and shout out to 47 for sending over codes for that one for us to check out. But yeah, for folks that enjoy that PS1 style survival horror, coming off of games like Crow Country this year, I think Fear the Spotlight was really, really cool. It was one that was announced with the Blumhouse publishing label at Summer Games Fest earlier this year, so it was on my radar. But I just really enjoyed the atmosphere of this one. I think just being in the moment with this game was really, really cool. I thought the voice acting was incredibly well done, and I think the visual filter and just the look of the game is really striking. I thought the puzzle design was just pitch perfect in a sense that I was always engaged, but I never felt frustrated, and I felt very smart and satisfied once I figured things out. And it's a shorter game in that sense, in that 4 to 6 hour window, and I think that's just the appropriate length for it. But yeah, highly recommend it. It's not a combat heavy one, so if you're like me in most instances where you don't want to fight crazy enemies and get scared all the time, like this is a nice one for you. If it falls into that, like, I think if you don't do well with scary games, I still might say you should give it a play. Like this is a nice like Halloween spooky season. Check it out. But yeah, highly recommend.
100% with you. So excited for what Cozy Game Pals does next.
Yeah, that's this being like their debut. It's like, oh well, this is fire. If you continue to evolve on this type of game, I'm curious if they'll stick within this same genre, because I think I saw an interview that Greg Miller did with them over on Kind of Funny, and they were mentioning like it might not be a scary game because that's not necessarily like their favorite genre. They just wanted to try something new, which I commend them for.
We've covered mouthwashing on the show, so we won't dive into it any deeper. It's a game that we really love, so go and check that out. It's in the description. The winner in this category was Thousand X Resist from Sunset Visitor. Well-deserved, wild story. Congrats to them. In women-led games, recognizing the outstanding achievements of a game developed by a women-led indie studio, celebrating innovation, creativity, and the unique perspectives brought to life through diverse storytelling and gameplay. The nominees were Gordlets by Auntie Games, Keylocker by Munana, Love Ghosty from Janbei Games LLC, Mexico 1921 A Deep Slumber by Makula Interactive, Nightmare Cart from LW Media, and The Crimson Diamond by Julia Minamata. The winner in this category was Mexico 1921 A Deep Slumber, a game that I need to check out because I saw the trailer and looked at it and said, ooh, this looks rad. Let's play it.
I believe it's coming to Xbox in January as well. So
another great excuse to play that one. We are running out of time here, so let's jump in and talk about solo development. The nominees in this category were Animal Well from Billy Basso, Children of the Sun from Renee Rother, Crypt Custodian from Kyle Thompson, Knuckle Sandwich from Andy Brophy, Aerial Knights, We Never Yield was a nominee. We'll cover why that isn't the case in a second, and Magical Delicacy from Skull. Why don't we first cover what happened with We Never Yield? They were nominated, but withdrew their nomination in a beautiful moment after the category. I don't know about y'all, but I knew the nominees, and I went, why isn't We Never Yield in here?
Yeah, I thought that
because,
too.
Yeah, it's because Neil withdrew their nomination, and then in that recognized, just to show you how beautiful the ceremony was, recognized, his friend who did music on the game, Daniel Wilkins, who has since passed since the game came out. Just a beautiful moment that I don't know if you guys did, but I cried when this moment happened, when Neil was recognizing his friend who he'd lost, who made the music for this game.
Yeah, it was really touching and really nice, and the music's incredible, and it was just nice to, I think, I don't want to speak for the 6-1 indie team, but this feels like the reason for the IGAs is to have time and space for these types of moments to celebrate folks that maybe some people weren't aware of the music and We Never Yield, and now as a result are going to check it out and celebrate that art that Daniel created. So shout out to them.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Perfect moment for this, and perfect reason why IGAs have like a perfect spot in the indie game community to spotlight things like this happening. Yeah.
Anything you guys want to shout out here? I know we had Children of the Sun as one thing that we wanted to chat briefly about.
What a banger.
What a banger
that
game.
Game's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and solo dev, which is even crazier.
Yeah.
It's like Sniper Elite, but with a little bit more a layer, I guess not a layer strategy, but like it's weird and culty and psychedelic, and then it's also got that Sniper Elite vibe, but more puzzly, where you have to sometimes chain your kills together. Rad, absolutely rad. I blew through this in like a week. So
yeah,
Shout out to Children of the Sun there.
My favorite part on that one was after you complete a level, it shows you like a map of your bullet trajectory and set to the indie grungy music of the soundtrack. It's just such a cool vibe, and you can see like your bullet darting around and then replay levels and the leaderboards and stuff with like, oh, so cool.
Anything else we want to chat through here? I know, Luke, you and I both briefly played Knuckle Sandwich. That's a 2023 game, but like a
It's
GBA
cool.
WarioWare like
Wacky
kind of mini game. Yeah, RPG also. It's like in the shadow of Undertale, and I hate to like put it in a box like that, but that is like a post Undertale game to me.
For sure. I feel like, I know we've talked about it on the show before, but I want to give Hooper the floor to gush about Animal Well briefly at least, and why it won the category. I agree that it was my top pick for this one as well, but like, what a fucking game.
Yeah, I mean, definitely go listen to me and Luke talk about this game in detail. It's amazing. And yeah, so I mean, I really enjoyed the moment where Madison Carr, who is also an indie developer, which they highlighted, or a solo developer, shouted out solo developers. I was like, oh, this would be great if she was able to give the award to her partner, Billy. And lo and behold, Billy got the award. I thought that was just like a really nice, wholesome moment. And once again, kind of highlights why it's really cool to have the IGAs here and have this like format where they can, I don't know, necessarily set up things like that, but have those special moments. And Animal Well, I think, deserves all the praise. And I think there's some heavy hitters, which I think we all know who the heavy indie hitter is this year. But I think Animal Well definitely deserves a lot of praise. So I'm glad they got this one for sure.
Finally, the final category of the evening, Game of the Year. The nominees were tenfold, or were 10 nominees this time around. I'll just read them out. Balatro from Local Funk, Mouthwashing from Wrong Organ, Animal Well from Billy Basso, 1000X Resist from Sunset Visitor, UFO 50 from Moss Mouth, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes from Simogo, Neva from Nomada Studios, Arco from Frantic, Max Calhill, Bibiki and Faye, Crypt Custodian from Kyle Thompson, and Nine Souls from Red Candle Games. We've talked about, I believe, almost every game on this list individually, either on this pod or a different pod. The winner was Balatro from Local Funk. So shout out to them. With that, any thoughts on the nominees, the categories, before we jump in and maybe talk about the industry awards and some of the non-game awards that were given out?
I'll just quickly say, holy crap! What a surprise to see Davion giving the final Game of the Year award. That was very heartwarming, because I'm always thinking, how's my little guy doing, and how's the game progressing? And it seems like he was in high spirits and very confident, and that was a good mood setter for the Game of the Year award. So I really enjoyed that.
Hell yeah, that was awesome. As like, we're folks who follow the indie scene, and I feel like folks that are going to be tuning into the IJs, it was like chef's kiss, perfect presenter choice. But yeah, this nominees list was like, I feel like, not to throw any shade, but compared to the TGA list, this list was like, oh my god, every pick on this list is incredible. I could make the argument for each one of these games. Ended up at the time of this recording, I played 9 out of 10 of these nominees. Like, I absolutely love my time with all of them, and the representation of well-known stuff to pleasant surprises to solo dev projects and everything in between. I just thought this was really, really cool. So if you're looking for 10 games to play this year, like, there isn't a better 10, I think, than this list.
Big time agree. We'll briefly talk before we close here on the 4 industry impact awards that were given out, and then another award as well. The 4 industry impact awards were given, which also was wild that we thought it was 1. It actually was more than 1. It was 4. Those were given to Strange Scaffold, New Blood, Inner Sloth, and Day of the Devs. I don't know about y'all, but when Tim Schafer showed up, I was like, what the hell? They got Tim Schafer? That's crazy.
That was so cool.
each one of those was really nice, and it was cool and like indie as fuck for them to like have Dave from New Blood essentially call out their billboard and like say, hey, let's do better for Strange Scaffold, to have a vertical video and then do the TikTok filters, because that's how we kind of know Xavier Nelson's content, and then Day of the Devs to be on there. Like I said, Tim Schafer is crazy to get on this show. Any thoughts on those four, y'all?
Loved them all. Outer Sloth was another one of seeing Victoria Tran rep everything they're doing, and that to me is like representative of like positive change we want to see within the industry, and they're putting their money where their mouth is, quite literally, in the best way. And yeah, I'm excited to see what all of those individual folks do and how that category evolves over time, because it was a perfect four, I think, that represented different facets of how the industry can improve and the folks that are doing really wonderful work within the space.
Yeah, I think the speeches that they gave kind of speak for themselves, and I highly recommend everybody go check them out.
Beyond the industry impact awards that were given out, there was also a category that was introduced. Beforehand, we knew it was just going to be the Storyteller Award, which recognizes an exceptional storyteller whose profound narratives and games create lasting impressions, weaving unforgettable experiences that resonate deeply with the players. We were told that the recipient would be announced at the show. So the winner and the person whose name will now be on the award going forward is Mohammad Fahmi, who we know from games like Coffee Talk, who tragically passed away. This, again, we talk about reasons for why the IGAs exist. This is one of those. We know how long that the 6-1 folks have been working on this. It was beautiful to not only get some past collaborators, but also Mohammed's parents. Like, I'm getting chills even thinking about it, to essentially like receive the award and talk on his behalf. Just beautiful. And excited for like not only this one, but also for like future awards that'll be given to future storytellers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know we're all smiling here on
Big
this
agree.
one.
Big
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah,
And being given the time and the space, because this would have taken like, this wouldn't happen in the TGAs, because I believe it was like a 4 or 5 minute segment in the show, and it was beautiful.
Yeah. That's also worth shouting out as well, because I know a big point for the IGAs was to gives devs the time and space, and I felt like the show did such a good job of just sitting in the moment in a nice way that allowed celebration, allowed respect. It's just tastefully done in the best way.
absolutely.
So those were our thoughts on the Indie Game Awards. Before we close, y'all, just wanted to see if you had any final thoughts.
Loved it.
Yeah, can't wait for next year.
Yep, I guess shout out to our friends at 6-1 Indie for putting this together. We are so happy and so proud of you guys for putting together such a beautiful thing. All right, y'all, that is the end of our show. So we are going to do the thing that we always do at the end of the show and ask you to do 3 things for us as we set our status to away. First, follow us on Twitter. Follow us on BlueSky, because we are there and posting things. And we've got a lovely community of folks that have followed us there and found us. So shout out to you if you're following us on BlueSky. Send this podcast to a friend, because that's how people hear about podcasts, and give us a review on your podcasting platform of choice. We had seen through the Spotify Wrapped that we have a huge increase in followers and listeners in 2024. So thank you. If you love our show, please give us a review wherever you listen to podcasts, because it truly, truly, truly helps. I guess with that, I'll close on 2024 for here. So again, tune in January for our Game of the Year show. But until then, we'll just scream at the top of our lungs, play more indies. Bye.